2016 will go down as the year Africa witnessed a big number of elections. 20 countries out of the continent's 54 held elections. Some were held as free and fair, while other countries were marred by violence and disputed outcomes. Elections in Zambia and Uganda were marred by violence, but there are those countries that will be remembered as standard bearers of democracy in Africa. Benin and Ghana stand out in this category. Then President John Mahama accepted defeat, while Boni Yayi opted to respect the constitutional term limit. Finally, a shock opposition victory brought hopes that Gambia could achieve its peaceful transition, but this is yet to happen as the incumbent Yahya Jammeh later rejected the voting outcome. Well, let's bring in our correspondents for more perspective on this. Deji Badmas joins us live from Lagos, and Abdulaziz Bello is live from Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. Deji, let's begin with you. West Africa has provided both the best in democratic elections in Ghana and Benin, as well as problematic ones in Gabon and the Gambia. Why this big difference?
Well, Penina, let me just say West Africa almost got it right until what happened in the Gambia. Of course, in Gabon, things are a bit calm now, but in Gambia, it would have been a perfect situation for West Africa if not for the fact that Yahya Jammeh eventually changed his mind and decided not to, to withdraw what he had earlier. He had earlier considered defeat and then withdrew. Now, there's a big difference. When you look at the elections. In the case of Ghana, for instance, we know that Ghana had actually set a reputation for itself as being a stable democracy. So what it actually did this time was to cement that reputation of being the most stable democracy in West Africa when President Dramani Mahama conceded defeat even before the Electoral Commission announced the final result. And before then, of course, let's not forget that it happened in Nigeria. Former President Goodluck Jonathan conceding defeat even before the final results came into President Muhammadu Buhari. And in the case of Benin, Boni Yayi, of course, he was not on the ballot, but eventually his party lost and there was a peaceful handover. Unfortunately, in the case of Gambia, it didn't play out that way. Initially, President Jammeh conceding defeat and later saying he was not going to accept the outcome of the result and has decided to go to court. But fact is that with the exception of what we have seen in Gambia and what we saw also in Gabon, and eventually things calming down there, a culture of democracy is beginning to take root in West Africa, and leaders are beginning to see that, they just cannot perpetuate themselves in power. They cannot, for instance, change their constitution to remain in power, and that when they lost election, when the people, eventually make up their mind and say it's time to go, that they just have to go. And it's a good thing that ECOWAS is coming in on the Gambia situation and asking President Jammeh to go January 19th. But we just have to wait and see how that plays out. Penina?
All right. Abdulaziz, let me cross over to you because Somalia seems to be struggling in adhering to a fixed date for its presidential election. What are the major challenges being experienced there?
Well, Penina, the elections were initially planned to take place on the September 10th, but over the course of the month, it was later postponed to October, later to November, and now, as we know, that according to the electoral timetable, the presidential vote is set for the 28th of December, but we have confirmed that that's not going to happen in the course of December. We have confirmed that from authorities, although yet the Electoral Commission is yet to give a new date for the presidential polls, but a number of factors have been attributed towards the main reason as to why the elections has been delayed time and over again. Now, one of the factors to note is that the elections are not being conducted in one particular place, not just in the capital. They are being conducted in 6 administrative capitals spread all across the country, including Mogadishu itself. Initially, 135 clan elders used to select Somalia's next government. They used to name, they were in charge of naming new members of parliament who will later pick a president, but that system has completely been changed. Experts are saying that Somalia is headed towards a democratic process, and to begin with, it has formed an electoral college comprised of 14,000 delegates drawn from all the clans here in Somalia. These 14,000 delegates are picking Somalia's members of parliament there. That's one of the reasons as to why the process has been delayed all along. The representatives of Somaliland are still being elected as we speak here in the capital, Mogadishu. They are yet to be named. And also, Somali leaders have been meeting here in Mogadishu to discuss some of the grievances that were raised by clan elders here in terms of their representations. Now we have learned that the Somali National Leadership Forum, that is the federal government and the regional government, they've come together and decided to increase the number of upper house representatives from 54 to 72. So that will also be one of the reasons for the delay. But another attribute factor that we have noted is security. The elections are planned, the elections will take place in January. We have learned that. And the Al-Shabaab has termed the vote as illegitimate. And we have seen over the past couple of months deadly explosions here in Mogadishu that has killed hundreds of people. So those are some of the factors, Penina, that is being blamed for the delaying of the polls in Somalia.
Right. Deji, there has also been a trend of the incumbent presidents losing elections in West Africa. What are some of the factors behind this pattern?
Well, there are actually a number of factors, Penina. First is when a political party has been in power for a very long time, it's a problem, especially when you know, things do not appear to be moving very well for the country. I'll give you a typical example. Nigeria, for instance, the former ruling party was in power for about 16 years, and unfortunately, sometime in 2014, the price of oil began to come down. For an economy like Nigeria that depends so much on oil, you know, the economy starts to slow down, and people became sort of dissatisfied, and eventually they took it out on the government. And so we saw the PDP government losing, and of course, you know, the opposition would always want to take advantage to say, look, they have something different from what the ruling party was offering. And that's the case of Nigeria. And that's exactly what we saw. Another factor, you could say we saw the same thing in Benin Republic as well, even though Yaya Boni was not on the ballot, but his party had actually been in power for quite some time. President Boni himself had been in power for about 10 years. Unemployment was a big issue. The economy wasn't doing well. And so the young population of that country just decided they were fed up, and they decided to move against the ruling party back then. Now, another factor, Penina, is that I would say I would blame it on what we have seen globally. I'm talking about economic recession. Whether you like it or not, from 2014 up to this period, we saw a slowdown in the global economy, and West African economy actually took a big hit. Take Nigeria, for instance. We are now in a recession, but the recession didn't begin today. I mean, it's something that started right from 2014 when the price of oil started coming down. Now, that also, we could also blame that on why President Mahama also lost the election in Ghana. The economy wasn't doing well. The problem of electricity was a big issue for the people. And then you have the devaluation of the currency there. So all of those factors actually played into the hands of the opposition. And the opposition, of course, capitalized on these factors to come into power. We also cannot discountenance the fact that these countries have a very huge young population, and this young population pretty got fed up with their presidents, because for some of them, their parties had actually been in power for a long time. Take the case of Yaya Jammeh of the Gambia, for instance. That man has been in power for 22 years now, and you know, the people actually just got fed up, and then the economy wasn't moving well. We saw that slow down in the economy, slow down everywhere. So those are the factors that actually combined to make it difficult for some of these incumbents to return. And we may not have seen the last of it. A couple of elections will be coming up, which we might see more incumbents losing election. We might see the opposition coming in. It's a trend. It's a trend we're seeing across not just West Africa, but even across the world as well, Benina.
Right. And Abdul, quite briefly, is there clarity as to when the country will hold its much-delayed presidential election?
Well, Penina, there's no confirmation yet from the Electoral Commission. What we understand is that the National Leadership Forum, that is the meeting between regional leaders and the federal government, is still ongoing here in Mogadishu. They will set the new date for the upcoming presidential polls, but for now all we know is that the regional leaders will have to ask the regional parliaments again to approve the increased number of upper house representatives. So once that is done, then the upper house will be able to be formed. And also the electoral dispute resolution body here has suspended, has nullified rather, the election of 11 lawmakers. It has cited instances of corruption and instances of intimidation of electoral officials as to some of the reason as to why those seats were nullified, and in some cases some seats designated for women were later challenged by men. So that also has to be addressed. Authorities here are saying that they need the 30% quota to be achieved for the women representation. So once all that is done and the election of the new members of parliament, that's when they'll be able to set a date for the poll. But according to the parliament, they have confirmed to us that tomorrow, the 27th, the swearing-in ceremony of some 256 members of parliament will take place here in Mogadishu. That information is still not confirmed because they will confirm that to us tomorrow. So we will also be focusing on that, Penina.
All right, let's leave it there for now. Abdulaziz Bello in Mogadishu and Deji Badmas in Lagos. Thank you.